to reflect that for you.
Did you see it? Yeah, that's it. There it is there, look, it's live. There's just a YouTube account, but you have to wait 6 months for it to be verified to make sure you are. What? Or no, you just go on to, if you type in Northern Ireland Fishing Board YouTube and Google, it'll automatically come up. And a big thing comes up, they're live now. So, but I mean, no, it's all changed. But these speakers is coming out of there. Here, don't worry. The sound is amazing. You will pick it up from. No question. It's the sound. Isn't the sound really good?
I'm not going to say it's super. I don't want to say it's super just in case somebody thinks it's not. What I want to do is just read it. You hang on top of the speaker. Normally you speak. Somebody would say press speed, but I think it's one previous one and you reach a bit so. There's usually a couple but say, I don't think anybody was There's 2 people watching.
Good afternoon, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Amanda Stewart. I'm as Chief Executive of the Policing Board. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here all today. I'm absolutely delighted to see some familiar faces and also some new faces. Many of you have been on the journey with us in the last number of years in terms of policing, and also some of the new faces providing a new critique perhaps to some of the discussion today and a new challenge for us. So you're very welcome. We very much appreciate the effort that you have made to come along for today's discussion. A key issue from our 15-year anniversary conference, and many of you were there, and also from our corporate plan consultation earlier this year, was a challenge to the board in terms of how we improve, how we engage and report back to the public on police performance, and also on our oversight and scrutiny work. So today is the first in a series of seminars that we're running throughout the year to focus on some of the key challenges for policing. We hope to bring a focus to the discussion to issues such as cybercrime, child sexual exploitation and race hate crime. There are some flyers in the room with details, and you can keep up to date with our plans online. We have also put on your chair, I think, an evaluation form. I'm looking to see that it was there, but it is. We're really keen to get some feedback in terms of future seminars and how we run them. So if you can take some time before we finish today to complete those, we would really welcome your feedback. In terms of the running order, we're going to start the proceedings today with a short film to put our work and the work of PSNI into some context. We will then hear from our board chair, Anne Conley, on the key measures set out in the policing plan. And following that, the Chief Constable will talk about how PSNI plan to deliver against the plan. I am planning to finish at 1:45 because it is a lunchtime seminar. In terms of some general housekeeping, we have no fire drill for today, so if the alarm goes off, chances are it's the real thing. Please follow our staff out of the building and make your way to the assembly point. You can obviously see that photography will be taken during the seminar, and it will be used online by the board for our publications at a later stage. If you do not wish to be included, I would ask you just to make a member of our staff available. Also, just to let you know that we are live streaming this today. You're very welcome to make comments using the Twitter or the hashtag NIPB Live or hashtag Policing Matters, and tagging us at NI Policing Board. Thank you, and as I always wanted to say this, roll on VT.
Policing matters. It's one of our most important public services, and the public have the right to expect that the police will be there to provide a professional service when needed. Every minute of every day, the police receive a call for service. That's 500,000 calls for assistance every year. Last year, there were just over 98,000 recorded crimes in Northern Ireland. Although crime levels here remain relatively low, there are areas where crime is underreported. While traditional types of crime continue to have a serious impact on our community, more visible crimes such as burglaries, criminal damage and offences against the person are giving way to new, less visible types of crime and criminality. Crimes committed online are increasing, as are crimes committed against those who are more vulnerable in our community. These crime types often have a high victim impact and can also be much more complex and resource intensive for policing to deal with. So the demands facing the service are significant, and whilst budgets have reduced, the police do have access to a significant resource to deliver the service to the community. There are 6,838 officers and 2,106 staff working in a range of frontline and specialist roles across the organisation. It's the primary duty of the police to protect life and property, and in managing the demands on the service, decisions have to be made about how the police use their budget to ensure that those who are at greatest risk of threat or harm, or those who are considered to be more vulnerable, are protected. Decisions have to be made about where to focus and prioritise resources to keep people safe. It's the job of the Policing Board to hold the PSNI to account for service delivery. That means the Chief Constable is legislatively accountable to the Board for all aspects of policing in Northern Ireland. The board sets out priorities for policing and monitoring how effectively the PSNI is delivering against those. In 2016, the board, following discussions with the Chief Constable and extensive public consultation, agreed strategic outcomes for the PSNI to achieve by 2020. How the police communicate and engage with the community, how the police work to protect the community they serve, what the police are doing to reduce offending, including serious and organised crime and paramilitary activity, police contribution to the wider justice system and the delivery of more positive outcomes for victims, and using available resources to best effect. This longer term vision sets out what the board wants the Chief Constable to achieve by 2020, and delivery is supported by the annual policing plan, which sets out the areas of focus for the year ahead, so that year-on-year improvements can be assessed. The 2017-18 plan contains 9 strategic outcomes, 25 high-level performance measures, and 11 lower-level measures that the PSNI will focus on in the year ahead. We'll now hear from the board chair and the Chief Constable on these measures and plans for delivery.
Thank you. I would like to now invite the board chair and Conley just to set out some of the measures and some of the detail that was given in the presentation on the film just before. Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. And again, it's great to see so many familiar faces, people who have been working with us and consulting with us over the last year. So you're very welcome, and we appreciate you taking the time to join us. I'm going to talk briefly about the seminars in general, because this is the first in a series of seminars, and our rationale for hosting these before going on to provide an oversight of the 2017-18 policing plan. Policing is a key service, as we all know, and I think it is important to have debate and discussion around the impact that policing has and on the issues and the challenges that the police service face and how they deliver the service to the public. And we don't get very many opportunities to have a seminar in public or a public discussion, and this is providing the opportunity for that. However, before I continue, I would like to pause for a moment just to record on behalf of the board the sincere sympathies to all of those who lost loved ones in the Manchester attack. It was absolutely dreadful. I'm sure all of you were shocked, whether you heard it the night before or whether you wakened up to the dreadful news in the morning. But it reminds us all of the challenges that policing have everywhere now, and it reminds us of how terror can come to a community so quickly. But we also need to remember the exceptional work that the police service and the other emergency services do in the aftermath of this. They have to deal with it, and they've had to deal with it here. So I felt we couldn't go on today without mentioning that. And obviously, as a result of that horrific event, a number of security decisions have been taken, and the Chief Constable will update us on that as part of his talk about what it means for us here. Today's seminar is one of a series which will be held by the board between now and the end of the financial year. Now, it is not a consultation exercise on the policing plan, nor is it the launch of the policing plan. The policing plan has been drawn up already as a result of consultation, and this is really informing you where we are at this time. The seminars are specifically designed to support the policing plan by providing a focus on a range of issues contained within the plan. We want to get discussion going on best practices and issues that impact policing, with the aim of seeking improvement in the policing service provided here. We will also draw, in some of the seminars, on expert opinions. That's not saying Chief Constable, you and I aren't experts, but we do have a number of experts coming from the policing and criminal justice landscape who will provide the opportunity to explore some other issues and discuss how policy and practice can best respond to meet the challenges that we face. This will help us as a board to increase our evidence base and assist in the oversight role in policing, whilst also providing the information which we need to continuously improve the police service, because that's what it's about, trying to make things better as we move along together.
Most of you will be aware, of course, that since the dissolution of the Assembly, the board has not been fully constituted without political party representation, and that is regrettable for us. However, a programme of work was agreed with the board before the political members left, and that included the policing plan. And myself, along with with all of the independents, most of them I think are here today, we have been working through that and progressing the work with the Chief Constable and his team as far as it's practicable to do. But it is my sincere hope that the political institutions are restored after the election in June, when that political representatives will return to the board, because we need to get on with the business in a much more consistent way. Those of you who have been with us and in the policing plan and with whom we consulted over the last few months will know that the board has already published a strategic outcomes document, and that really is setting the way ahead for the next 4 years for policing. This is what we would like overall at a strategic level to see the Chief Constable achieve by 2020. So that's a 4-year document with strategic outcomes, which most people would be familiar with. But each year then we have to draw an annual policing plan to take account of those outcomes and to look at how we set measures to see if we are actually moving forward. That's always done in conjunction with PSNI. The annual policing plan is the key statutory document that we have to produce, and it sets out the programme of work for policing over the course of a period of 12 months. The 2017-18 plan, which some of you may have there, I think there were some on the seat. So the strategic objectives and the measures within that plan are used by the board to hold the Chief Constable to account through measuring policing performance against a robust monitoring framework. Now, this framework is designed in a way which clearly sets out our expectations and that of the public. It is designed to encourage the PSNI to improve overall performance and to assist them in achieving a continuous improvement approach. It incorporates an outcome-based accountability framework as was advocated in the programme for government. The board's performance monitoring framework, which can be seen at the Appendix 1 of the plan, has been put in place to ensure that all the performance measures, both qualitative and quantitative, are included within the information provided to the board for the purpose of assessing the police performance in the year 2017-18. Now, I know that all sounds awfully staid and dull, but that's actually what we were missing. Many of you who consulted with us said, yeah, you're very good at setting out what you want to do, you're very good at setting out measures, but how are you actually monitoring this? And the fact that we were monitoring it through the committees was not always evident to the public. So the monitoring framework is our attempt to show how we're actually monitoring police performance, but also to communicate that to the public in a way that we can all understand. It's new. We're going to trial it, we're going to see how it goes, and of course, like any good organisation, we will make adjustments as we go along should we need to do that. Another reason why we need a full board back. The board, through its committees, will of course continue to scrutinise the PSNI's performance, but it will also play an important part as being an advocate for the general work that the PSNI do on a daily basis. This year's policing plan is year 2 of the strategic outcomes for policing, and we'll continue the journey we started last year while trying to build upon that and do even better. The policing plan has been divided into 5 overarching themes, which were in the strategic outcome document. Some of you will know those off by heart, some of us do too. And there's a total of 9 outcomes with 25 fairly high level performance measures and 11 lower level performance measures. Believe it or not, that's a reduction from previous years when we've taken a lot of criticism, criticised ourselves as well, probably for having too many measures, particularly activity measures, and not enough looking at actually what has been done or what has changed. So we have been trying over each year to improve upon that. And because we don't want a plan, as it used to be, that goes into a drawer and nobody really looks at it until a month before the end of the year. We want to keep this plan moving and alive, and the monitoring framework should help us to do that. I'm going to look at the themes just briefly with you. there is overarching theme 1, which is communication and engagement, which is part of what we're doing today. We all in this room know that trust and confidence in policing is better with good engagement with communities. The more we can engage with communities, the more we can explain, the more people can see the person in the uniform, then the better that can be. How the PSNI communicate and engage with the public is central to building that trust. And the Chief Constable always says, remember you're a citizen in uniform, and remember, they won't remember your name when you come out to visit them, but they will remember how you've treated them. So it is very important that the communication and engagement with the public, that we look at that and we keep an eye on that. Even though at the minute confidence overall is very high, we're still very aware that there are areas where we need to do more. Some of the issues which the board are aware of came through research and consultation, and they centre around how the PSNI are involved with local communities and how they respond when a service is required. And we have an ongoing debate around that, about neighbourhood policing and local policing teams and visibility of teams, and how in a time of scarce resources do we maintain that. And it's something that we're always aware of, particularly when people visit the PCSPs, we hear how it's working and how it's not. But in this particular theme, the PSNI will be asked to achieve a level of performance demonstrated through the measures to let us see how confidence in policing is achieved. Very quickly, just some of the measures were developed to look at increasing the level of public confidence. It is good, but we would like it to be better in some areas. And increasing the level of victim satisfaction. Reducing allegations made to the police ombudsman, improving underrepresentation across the police service, and embedding policing with the community. Theme 2 is the protection of people and communities. And this is really the outcome, and this are related to reducing harm caused by crime and antisocial behaviour, with a particular focus on protecting the vulnerable. Now, when the board was drawing up with the PSNI, the measures for this theme, we actually used evidence in the HMIC report. Her Majesty's Inspector produced a report on police effectiveness, and we found that very useful in helping us to look at what needs to be done and what more needs to be done and what are the areas that we need to look at. And simply to say that one of the areas that really HMIC felt we needed to look more at was the whole area of vulnerability and people who are vulnerable in whatever way you want to define that. But we need to look at that and how we hold the police to account over treating people who are vulnerable. There are 5 measures in that one. See there it says 4, but I think I've got 5. But anyway, it's improving. I maybe added one on. Sorry, Chief Constable. Improving the service to the most vulnerable through the rollout of support hubs in collaboration with the PCSPs. And for those of you who are here as PCSPs members today, a key role, I believe, in helping to identify the most vulnerable and working with the local police commanders to deal with that. I think it's very, very important. We don't forget to work with the PCSPs. Domestic violence and sexual offences, which if you saw the recent police statistics, there's a bit of work to be done there. Although crime overall is down, there are areas that concern the police and they take very seriously. Collaboratively addressing antisocial behaviour in areas where it's very high, and we notice that it has gone down quite a bit in Belfast, and I believe that was an area which really got together all the key agencies to try and drive down antisocial behaviour, and it worked. So a very good example of how partnership working can make things change. Police can't do it on their own. The third theme, to try and reduce offending, and this is under this theme has 3 strategic outcomes, and they relate to identifying and intervening with priority offenders, addressing serious and organised crime, and tackling paramilitarism. The board are aware that the nature of the crime has changed over the course of the last few years, and that is why the PSNI have been adapting its approach, greater focus on partnership working to reduce offending and tackling crime. It is also recognised that the means at which crime is committed has changed, and that crime is increasingly facilitated and enabled by technology. And it's a debate that we at the board have. How do we ensure that the police can put enough officers out there on the street, but at the same time address the very serious harm which comes to people through the internet, where it wouldn't matter if you had 5 police officers sitting in your kitchen, you could still be scammed, or so we need to really talk about that in public forums. There are measures for this as well. One is to demonstrate an effective contribution to the management of priority offenders, reducing harm caused by organised crime groups, drug, cybercrime dependent groups, and demonstrating an effective contribution towards the implementation of the Executive Action Plan and Joint Agency Task Force, and to the elimination of paramilitarism. And work is going on in that area, even though people sometimes think it isn't. Theme 4, more efficient and effective delivery of justice. That is related to a more effective partnership with the various agencies, particularly the Public Prosecution Service and all of the other criminal justice agencies. And measures under that: improving the efficiency and effectiveness of the work between the PSNI and the PPS. We don't want to hear the PPS saying we're not accepting files, or any other reason why they might not do something. We want the partnership to work, and if there are issues, to know about it, as the police do. Delivering more positive outcomes for victims through evident progress made in legacy cases. Theme 5 then in the plan is the final theme, and it's the overarching one: an efficient and effective police service, which is what regularly Her Majesty's Inspectorate come in to inspect. And when setting the measures for this theme, the board looked closely again at what HMIC had done and what they were recommending. And the PSNI were asked to look at the demand for their service. What is the demand for your service today? How well do you understand it? How well do you match your resources to the demand? Because what people want isn't always what they need. And the PSNI have to be strong enough to say, well, actually, you might want that and it's wonderful, but demand shows us that we need to do X, not Y. And also an assessment of how efficient the police service is, how well it spends its money and allocates it to various sections. And the recommendations from that HMIC report helped us to shape the measures within that theme. I'll not go into in detail to those measures. There are 5, and again, all built around a number of pointers that we would be looking for in our evidence base and the monitoring framework. Of course, all of this requires resources, and central to the delivery of the policing service and the plan are resources. And everybody knows that public sector budgets have been cut, have been reduced, and policing has been no different. Taken quite a big cut, at least for the time being, because it's all dependent on what might happen in the future politically. But what really has changed for policing is not just that they have taken a cut in the budget, is that the demands, as I referred to earlier, have increased. People expect more of policing, demands are greater, and they have to actually deal with the new and emerging issues as well. So everything is tagged on, and we need time to look at how do we do that. How do the police service deal with cybercrime? And what's the best way to deal with that? There's still, of course, we were reminded, significant resources available to the police. And I suppose, which is a conversation we were having yesterday with the police service, was how now do you use those to best effect? Because when there's loads of money, you can do absolutely everything. But when you have to tighten your belt, you really need to look at, am I doing what is the right thing? And am I doing what is absolutely necessary? And of course, it's important to say that the policing plan itself doesn't include all the issues that the police deal with on a day-to-day basis. I mean, that would be impossible because they deal with so much. But rather brings focus to a number of issues that will take us a step closer to the delivery of the strategic outcomes. We think that the Manfred Policing Service, that we have to remember that they are operating against a serious threat. That's been the way in Northern Ireland. As the Chief Constable may want to say more about what else has changed. But that's always been the case, and I think we were told at least one incident a month perpetrated against the police since Christmas. So that's always ongoing. But still we expect them to go out and deliver a good service. And it's the job of the board to ensure that we do. But I think to come back to the demands, the public needs to be helped to better understand the demands that are placed in policing and how the police have to prioritise these in order to ensure that they are delivering a service to protect those who are most vulnerable and who are at the biggest risk of threat. So actually, if my car breaks down, I don't need to ring 999, but I might do if I was in some kind of a vulnerable situation, and the police have to make those judgments. The board takes advice from the Chief Constable on resourcing levels needed for delivery, and whilst overall numbers are important, and we hear all the time about the numbers going up and down, numbers are important indeed, but actually it's much more important to have the right workforce and the skills mix. So again, that was featured in the HMIC report. If you need people to tackle cyber crime, do you need police officers? Do you need people to go and train for police officers? You probably need somebody who's hacked the bank. That might not be legal. Yes, and I to bring that person in. But there are certain skills now which may need to be brought in through different ways, not just always police officers. And the police service has indeed been looking at that and increasing the numbers on the staff side to reflect how they have to work in this world. The resourcing challenges in the time ahead are significant. We've no doubt of that. It will be difficult. We can't pretend that it won't be. But I'd have to say that the police have been dealing with this with optimism, which is good, and it's the way forward. We had a discussion about it yesterday, and it's let's get on and do this and do our best, and not say we need more of this and more of that. Of course, we need more money, but in the interim, we will get on with it and do as good a job as we can possibly do. But I think it's also brings us to what it was like in education. It reminds me about 20 years ago, where everybody said, well, the way forward is to collaborate with partners. Let's work more with partners. And I think that is very, very important. And we have a number of key partners in the room. And again, where PSNI have worked with those partners, they have seen significant changes in what they're doing. So issues, for example, like tackling domestic abuse, there are a lot of key agencies there that PSNI work with and need to work with, so that we can try and reduce the harm caused by that. But also harm in the community caused by drugs and alcohol. Again, loads of people in the community can help with that. And I'll remind us all again about PCSPs. I think we miss a key opportunity there with those local policing partners. We don't work with them enough to help build the trust and confidence of the community and get them to help police identify those who are vulnerable. The policing service is very, very important, and it really does matter. For most of us, it won't matter until we need the police service, but it does matter. And we all expect it to be there if we have a moment of need. So we must all work together to continue to deliver the best possible service. I'm going to now hand over to the Chief Constable, who will actually bring a bit of life to the Skull plan, because he and his team are the people who have to actually deliver it. And we will obviously as a board be working with them, hopefully to meet the public expectations, but also I think to help the public to understand how times are changing and things are different. And we'll probably never go back to having as much money as we used to have. So we look forward to questions later, but I'm going to hand over now to the Chief Constable. Thank you.
Chair, thank you very much for that very comprehensive overview of what the board has prioritised for policing within the next year, which is largely based on the community expectations as part of the consultation that we did on priorities for policing. I'm now going to invite the Chief Constable to respond in terms of how PSNI intend to deliver against the plan, particularly in terms of meeting public expectations in terms of policing. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda, and good afternoon, everyone. Like the chair, I suppose like all of us in this room, events in Manchester over the last few days are very much at the forefront of our minds. Precious families torn apart by an act of terror. Pain that for most of us is unimaginable. How we respond to such terror matters. To use the words of Jo Cox, the MP who herself was brutally murdered in West Yorkshire last year. She said, "We are far more united and have far more in common than that which divides us." How true those words are. We must stand united in the face of such terror, both in this community and alongside our fellow citizens in Manchester. So today we send our thoughts and our sympathy to those who have lost loved ones and those who have been injured in Manchester. And we send our support to the people of Manchester and to the police officers and staff of Greater Manchester Police and indeed the other emergency services. The Police Service of Northern Ireland have been offering our support to our colleagues in Greater Manchester, and that liaison has been led by Assistant Chief Constable Barbara Gray, and I'm grateful for that. As a consequence of Manchester, you will be aware that the threat level across the United Kingdom, including in this jurisdiction, has increased from severe to critical, and that means an attack is expected imminently. That's how critical is defined. So this critical level of threat also applies here in Northern Ireland for now. In response to this assessment, we have reviewed our operational profile, and you will see, the public will see, an increased police presence at things like iconic sites, at railway stations, at airports, transport networks, and anywhere really where there's large numbers of people congregating. There is an operation that exists in other parts of the United Kingdom, in Britain, Operation Temporary. This is about the military deployment in response to such attacks. That operation does not apply in this jurisdiction, and there are good reasons for that. I'm happy to take questions about that later if needs be. In addition, it has also been well documented, of course, that unlike other parts of the United Kingdom, the current threat level here from violent dissident Republican groupings across Northern Ireland is severe. So our footprint and our gearing is already starting at a different base level to other parts of the United Kingdom. That severe threat, unfortunately, from violent dissident Republicans continues to remain at that level. So bringing us to our seminar this afternoon, and I'm grateful for all who have taken the opportunity to attend. Thank you for coming, and thank you for your interest in policing. Some of you might find this difficult to believe, but since we've entered into the recent, not so recent now, over the last number of months, and the political difficulties that have surfaced, I've actually missed coming to public meetings of the Policing Board. We have actually continued to work very constructively with the Chair, the Vice Chair, the Chief Executive and the staff. The board, before it ceased to exist in its current, on its previous legal footing, did empower the Chair and the Vice Chair to continue with various work programs, and we're actually grateful for that, because from our point of view, trying to run a big organisation, it's very frustrating if you're waiting for the governance and the oversight and the accountability to catch up. So the Policing Board passed, and those that are left behind have put in place very constructive arrangements to keep the momentum going. So I don't want you thinking that things are slipping, or indeed even that accountability is slipping. We had regular meetings with the Chair, Vice Chair, and Chief Executive, where we deal with pretty much the same issues that we've always been dealing with and enjoying scrutiny and support around in the public meetings of the Policing Board. The Policing Board is an incredibly important accountability mechanism, the accountability body, although there's several accountability bodies that reach into policing that we answer questions to. But this is the linchpin for us in terms of accountability and therefore in public confidence. And it's good that we're able to discuss policing in an open and a transparent way. That's a good thing for policing. It leads to healthy policing, it leads to public confidence in policing. And I'm grateful to the board for coming for these upcoming seminars, the first of which we're doing today, and that'll provide further opportunity to have such discussions, and of course we do look forward to the reconstitution of the policing board once we get some sort of political settlement. The policing plan, which is the subject of our discussion today, is an important part of those accountability structures. We need to know what we're aiming for if we're ever going to have any chance of having it. Through its strategic outcomes, as the Chair has explained, the plan sets a clear and sensible direction of travel to which we are fully committed. In particular, I welcome the plan's focus on vulnerability, and I appreciate the board's support in ensuring that our reducing resources will be focused to protect the most vulnerable in our society. The plan does set a high bar for policing. It's not going to be easy, but the bar has been set, and of course that's extremely challenging, especially with reducing resources, and I'll come on to that in a moment or two. So planning for the year is not easy if you're uncertain about the budget, you don't know what your inputs and your resources are going to be. It's therefore difficult to commit, but we would far rather, as the Chair has said, come up with a plan. It might need to be reviewed when the board reconstituted. It might be whenever the finances become more clear. As we continue to get increasing clarity around the budget, then with the board we can always take another look at what our plan is, but it's important that we do have a blueprint or a plan to work towards. And of course, for us, at the operational end, and being able to answer the questions on performance to the board, we need a mechanism for prioritising which bits of the plan we give how much resource to, and we do that in a well-trodden model around looking at things that matter most to people, that can cause most harm. So things like threat, risk, harm, vulnerability, as I've mentioned. And all of this, I suppose, is our ability to perform is really a function of the resources that we're given. It's a function of other things as well, around our spirit and our commitment and our dedication to public service and all the rest of it. But resources are an inescapable function of police performance. In recent weeks, we've been given an indicative budget for the current financial year on the basis of a 3% cut, or that translates in pound notes into £20 million of cut. And to give that figure some meaning, and we're not going to do this, by the way, but it's just to try to give you a sense of the size and shape of that impact. £20 million would pay for all of our neighbourhood policing teams for 1 year. So that's, don't please interpret that we're going to scrap neighbourhood policing. We're not, we're committed to it. But to try to give you a sense of what that would feel like in terms of numbers of people and so on. And £20 million to some, comparatively looking at our overall revenue budget, may not feel that impossible. I'm not saying it is impossible, it will be challenging, but it needs to be taken in the context of previous cuts. So in the short 3 years since I have been Chief Constable, we've already had cuts of £108 million, and then this further 20 million coming on top of that obviously compounds the challenge. In fact, since 2004, the Police Service of Northern Ireland has implemented cuts totaling some 386 million. In response to these cuts, officers and police staff have modernised, have flexed, have shown agility, have gone the extra mile, and in many cases actually they have brought about creativity, through creativity and innovation, different ways of working so that we can maintain our service delivery to the public, and I'm grateful for that. In doing so, as we have navigated our way through all of these cuts, we have tried our best to keep at the heart of our decision-making community, doing our best to protect the front line and to deliver a balanced budget. Saving another £20 million from an already reduced budget will not happen without some very significant operational changes. numbers aren't everything, but they are important, and I want to talk to you for a moment about police officer numbers. The reality is that the police service of Northern Ireland is now at a point where it is no longer possible to absorb the budget cuts without impacting directly on police officer numbers. The budget allocated is going to necessitate a reduction in police numbers. We have a workforce model that is geared around almost 7,000 officers, 6,963 to be exact. That is going to have to change in this financial year down to 6,700 based on affordability, and indeed next financial year, unless something positively surprising happens, that number will fall further to 6,600 as police officers. We also will be having to make a significant cut to our overtime budget. That will actually remove about 500,000 policing hours from the streets of Northern Ireland. So a reduction in numbers and a reduction in overtime, leading to 500,000 hours less policing footprint in our communities. So this creates for me two big challenges of equal importance in my view. Firstly, managing the impact on our ability to continue to deliver a service to the community. And secondly, the impact on our officers and staff who are already stretched to capacity. It's my job, I suppose, as Chief Constable to be honest with the public and with the politicians about the implications of this latest set of cuts in the context of a policing plan that has my support, but which has a bar set very high. I need to do my best to continue to deliver this important public service called policing, and at the same time to look after the resilience and the well-being of our officers and staff, our most important asset. This is, I suppose, the reality of the public finance situation. I'm not looking for your sympathy, I'm simply being honest with you. Leaders right across the public sector, including PSNI's partner agencies, many of whom are in this room this afternoon, are struggling with exactly the same challenges. We're not alone in this. And while I would like to have that 7,000 officers that our model has indicated up until this point, that is simply not possible on the basis of affordability. But that does not mean that we can't keep people safe. What it does mean is that policing will continue to change. Since becoming Chief Constable, I have been honest with the public that policing is changing. Traditional visible crime is giving way to a new, less visible crime. This crime is often cyber-related or cyber-enabled crime, and it can cross international boundaries, making it much more difficult and expensive to prevent and to investigate. Indeed, the recent international cyber attack that affected a number of sectors, but widely reported as impacting on the National Health Service, that is evidence of the scale of this threat, and PSNI officers and staff are continuing to work as part of the joint policing response to that particular attack. That is having a big impact on our capability around tackling cybercrime. Another significant shift in demand has been that many of the people who require police, is the amount of people who require police protection and safeguarding today. And we don't do that, of course, in isolation. We do it with partner agencies. But many of these people have an acute vulnerability that requires sensitive policing and closer cooperation with our partners, and does not get reflected in crime or incident recording. This is an area that needs greater investment, and we are going, and if we're going to protect the most vulnerable in our communities, then we need to put the resource to it. On average, we receive around 1,500 calls for service every single day, and only about just under 4%, 3.7% of those calls require an emergency response. But approximately 36% of those calls have a significant element of vulnerability, that is, vulnerable people in need of help. 36%, over a third of our calls for service are linked directly to the vulnerability issue. This is something that we are learning more about, that are equipped to handle, and need to rely more and more on our partners, and in some cases need partner agencies to step up to the plate to fulfil their responsibilities. In addition, on average, every single day we search for 35 missing people who are reported to us. Around half of that number are reported missing from hospitals or children's homes, and every missing person ties up a crew of police officers, normally 2 police officers, until they're found. Very often that can be for hours or even for days. That is the significant demand that, again, doesn't necessarily get recorded in our crime and incident statistics. In recent years, we have invested quite heavily in our public protection branch and in our cyber crime centre. Our investment in these areas is less visible and it needs to be increased. So that capacity, those people are going to have to come from other parts of policing. Policing is going to change. The issues that we need to tackle are moving from the public space into the private space, from the highly visible and impactful into the highly impacted and less visible space of laboratories, of cybercrime centre, of public protection arrangements, and it's right that we do that. That means we're going to have to take money from elsewhere in the policing budget to finance these priority areas. Investigating cyber crime and cyber-related crime and protecting the most vulnerable in our society are duties expected of any police service in these islands. But policing Northern Ireland's post-conflict society comes with additional complexity and costs. So the severe threat emanating from violent dissident Republicans that I talked about earlier places a substantial financial burden on the delivery of policing in Northern Ireland. This year there have been at least 4 serious attempts to murder police officers. Whilst we do receive additional security funding from the UK government, we're still spending over 27% of our main grant budget dealing with Northern Ireland specific issues. That is, issues that colleagues in other parts of the United Kingdom do not have. This includes responding to paramilitarism and the significant costs of preventing and responding to serious public disorder, as well as the cost, of course, of dealing with the past and the unresolved legacy issues, both by way of criminal investigation, litigation, and indeed coronial inquests. It's one of my greatest frustrations, not to put it too strongly, but it's one of my greatest frustrations as Chief Constable that I'm consistently forced into a position where I have to make decisions about putting my finite police resources to police the present or the past. It's a wicked problem. It's a horrible dilemma because the past, as I said before, is the present for those who are still suffering the loss of a loved one and dealing with the trauma and grief of our past conflict. The impact that that past and the legacy issues has on confidence in policing is immeasurably high, and we can't dismiss it. But I cannot prioritise legacy investigations over present day threats. I don't think you would expect me to. I don't think the community would expect me to. I have asked that in line with our statutory responsibilities that we review the costs of legacy investigations. We will restrict further growth in the area of legacy investigations, and where possible we will be, in this financial year and the next one, releasing resources from legacy work into other aspects of present day policing to address the threats and the vulnerabilities that I've been talking about. So I guess on that front I would encourage yet again our politicians to continue to work to bring about a resolution to this momentous challenge. Well, it's a challenge not just for policing, although we feel the financial burden of it very heavily. but it's actually a challenge for all of those who continue to suffer the pain of the past every day, and of course that includes many members of the police family in the broadest sense as well. So what will all of this mean for the communities that we serve? The complexity of the demands that we face, combined with the budget cuts, means that there are changes in the way that police services everywhere are working to keep people safe. First of all, I want to be clear. We will continue to keep people safe. Of the 1,500 calls for service every day, 3.7 of those require an emergency, 3.7% of those require an emergency response, and those people in their hour of deepest need are still going to get an emergency response. We are still an emergency service. We still have significant resources available to us. We need to prioritise properly so that we are meeting people at their point of need when it is a genuine emergency. But we will need the patience of the public and our politicians in response to calls that are not an emergency. While community policing will remain at the heart of what we do, reducing budgets and changing crime types and the demands that we've talked about will require a different approach in terms of our response. There will be further station closures. There will be further restricted opening times in police stations. I'll not pretend that this is going to be easy. I have a particular concern about the reduction in our ability to deliver proactive anti-crime operations and our ability to invest in innovation so that we can make long-term savings, because the money simply isn't there to make those investments. But over recent years, rather than get distracted by the numbers of officers and the staff that we don't have, this police service that I'm honoured to lead, we have focused on modernising and transforming and increasing our capability of our staff and of our officers so that we can focus on what we can do. There is every reason for us to be positive, enthusiastic and optimistic about this great public service that we deliver. Over recent years we have become a much more efficient organisation, and our ongoing programme of change led by the Deputy Chief Constable and the workforce modernisation will continue so that we're making better use of the significant resources that we still have. We also have in place a much more holistic framework to support the morale and the well-being and the resilience of our officers and staff. Our people are, as I've already said, our most important asset, and we must continue to ensure that they are looked after. I will look for the support of the new policing board in informing the public, in dealing with expectations, and in helping us in partnership to take this forward. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to bring my remarks to a conclusion at this point, but I want to leave you by repeating a commitment that I gave you not long after taking up the post of Chief Constable. I take my job as a counting officer, the need to balance the books and be a good steward of public money, very seriously. My officers and staff and I work hard to deliver a balanced budget, and we'll continue to do that. We've done that every year. But my first job is that of Chief Constable, of being a police officer, and I will never compromise on my commitment to keep people safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief Constable. I'm going to ask the Chief Constable and the Board Chair just to take their seats at the front. I'm very conscious that there has been a lot of information given to you, so I'm actually just going to go straight into questions at this stage from the floor. What I would ask you to do is just to indicate to me that you have a question. We have a number of roving mics, I think, in today. Yes, we do. I would ask you just to use the mic, because obviously we're live streaming today, and just for the purpose of people who are maybe listening through the live stream. If you just introduce yourself and your question, and who you want to answer the question. Thank you. So, any questions? I'm going to give you a few minutes to think of a question. I've never seen a room as quiet. And maybe just I'll open up, Chief Constable and Chair. The focus of today's session is in terms of delivery and meeting public expectations. And since its inception, PSNI and the board have been committed to policing the community as the ethos through which policing is delivered. Chief Constable, you've set out a number of challenges facing policing in your input today. You've also said that policing is changing. Throughout these changes, how have you kept the community at the heart of the decision-making process? And perhaps, maybe in terms of the policing board, just in the context of the Chief Constable's comments about the attack in Manchester over the last few days, what role does the board have in providing confidence to the community that the police have the resources to deal with everyday policing and additional terrorist threats? Chief Constable.
Well, I think keeping the community at the heart of policing, regardless of how big or small the budget and the resources are, is critically important. Now, this doesn't mean that everybody gets everything that they want when they want it. It is something that we've just been good stewards of the resources that we've got available. But I think there is something about our mindset and our ethos that is not cash dependent. So for us, we have set ourselves the sort of elevator test of can we explain what we're about in the sort of 90 seconds or 2 minutes. And that's divided into two sections. One is the what policing is, and then the other piece is how we do policing. The what policing is the keeping people safe piece. Pretty straightforward, difficult sometimes because of the operating environment, but it's about preventing harm, protecting people, and bringing offenders to justice. That's the straightforward piece, generally. The how is more cultural. It's a mindset, it's an ethos, it's a lens through which we view that what of policing. And we call that policing as the community. And that has been an overused and ill-defined term since the Patton Report. For us, the common language now being used is actually drilling into what that means. It's about collaborative decision making or good partnership working. We sort of steer away a wee bit from partnership because it has become a term that it tends to get defined by who organises the meeting and pays for the tea and biscuits. We actually talk about collaborative decision making because we want to get to the point of action, the point of actually doing something together. Proper collaboration, proper partnership, and that includes collaboration with communities. That's why the PCSPs are so important. That's why consultations are so important. It's why engaging with people around what the policing profile for parades and protest activity look like. That is good policing. So there's that collaborative decision-making piece, which if people are starting from that mindset, that point of reference, leads to better policing and keeps communities at the heart of what we do. There is something about accountability, and I don't just mean this bit with the policing board, important though that is, but I'm talking about us being responsive and answerable and telling our story almost without needing to be asked to communities, explaining our actions, having in mind what explanation would a community like or expect to give them confidence that we are considering them in delivering a policing service. And I suppose the third element is almost, it shouldn't need stated because it's about good manners, actually. It's the stuff that I would imagine all of us in this room were brought up with. It's about treating people with courtesy, with fairness and respect. And, you know, people would say that courtesy costs nothing, and it doesn't. So whether the budget cut is 20 million, 60 million, or additionality, in my fantasy world of 100 million, those principles of policing with the community are what is at the core of policing in this jurisdiction. And it's our job, those of us in leadership in policing, to make sure that we get that message right down and through and across all of the organisation, into all specialisms, whether it's legacy investigations or surveillance teams or hard-edge stuff, roads policing, or in the neighbourhood policing teams, where it probably sits most naturally. But actually, that mindset is what leads to good policing and keeps communities at the heart of what we do, regardless of the size of the budget.
Thank you, Chief.
I think as was made very clear by the Chief Constable, that the board is the accountability body, and sometimes I think people forget that. But also we must remember, because we are that, we have a big responsibility. We have responsibility on two counts, and on two, but not only two. The main one being accountability, and that means having frank discussions about what is happening. It's about being prepared to challenge, and I think the Chief Constable would be up front and saying that we certainly do that, and making sure that we ask the right questions, which is what we've been talking about today, trying to get a monitoring framework that actually does challenge. It goes beyond statistics, which there's an awful lot of discussion needs to go on behind the actual board statistics. So we have a duty to raise the confidence by being there and asking the questions. I think probably we haven't been good enough about communicating how we do that, because our committees meet here, and even though stuff goes online, members of the public say they don't really know what the board does, so hence today and that kind of thing. So making sure that we do that we do put pressure on if we feel we need to ensure that the police are doing the right thing. The second part of it, I think, is the advocacy bit, which is really about ensuring that there are enough resources. Now, so far, we haven't had any major noises from the police saying they don't have enough, we would like more. But I think it is the duty of the board to ensure that there is enough. So, for example, we accept that there will have to be some reduction in neighbourhood policing in some areas. We have to, as a board, be assured that in the areas where it's really needed, it's there. And we've been having discussions about that. But at the same time, educating the public, you don't need it as to why. So there's a big job for us, and bringing the community with us, I think, because the community can actually work with the police and can give the police a lot of information which can help the police to deal with the issues that cause problems.
Okay, thank you, Chair. A couple of people have indicated they want to come in. I'm just going to bring, first of all, this gentleman at the back, and then there's another gentleman at the back here, and yes.
Chief Constable, this question is to yourself. We've listened to you talking about Northern Ireland specific issues are costing so much money, and the rest of the UK doesn't have these costs. We then listen to a reduction in officer numbers that's going to be occurring, and we also listen to a reduction in overtime hours that's going to be happening. This is at a time when the UK threat level has been increasingly critical. Why are you not going to deploy military officers to back you up in this critical threat level that we have throughout the United Kingdom, which would take that strain away from your own resources?
Well, of course I could ask for such support, and there are provisions in place to do that. We are different. Our whole gearing is different around specialist firearms officers that we have that other parts of the UK don't have. We get an additional security fund of around £60 million a year to allow us to deal with the severe threat emanating from Bandists and Republicans. Our officers here are all routinely armed and accredited as firearms officers. That doesn't happen in other parts of the United Kingdom. And I'm not going to bring or ask for military to come onto the streets just because other parts of the United Kingdom do. I'll look at our own capability, I'll look at our own capacity. The gearing that we have to tackle the severe dissident threat is similar to what is required to tackle this critical threat that has emanated from a different form of violent extremism in this Islamist, this perverted Islamist thought, of course, concept, because whilst the nature and the tone of it and the motivation might be different, it is still a threat to harm society, to harm police officers, and as Manchester showed actually, to just impact so horrifically on communities generally. So I'm not going to make a bid for military resources onto the streets in our post-conflict society just because everybody else has the need to do that. I don't think we're at that stage. The threat level will be kept under constant review, and we'll see what happens in the days ahead. It is a UK-wide threat level at critical, and clearly different parts of the UK are more vulnerable and more susceptible to that than others. But we are listening to the government. We are taking seriously the threat assessment as it's been outlined, and the work that we have done under Barbara Gray's leadership overnight in terms of raising our profile around iconic sites and public places and transport networks and so on. I'm satisfied that that is sustainable in the medium term and that we can do that without seeking military assistance.
Thank you. Chief Constable, sorry, before we go, I'll actually just go back on that. Albert, did you want to come in on that point, or is it a separate issue? So
It was just more or less, Chief Constable, about small public offence, you know, like funerals, what do you call it? And, you know, village festivals type, things like that, where police still be available for that. Another thing, I'd say on Easter Monday, down in Ards, or not Ards, in Bangor, there was 4,000 young people, and the police, was a big plenty, I think, as far as I know, but all the other voluntary organisations, they were in the streets, and they were in the trains, up and down, constantly all day long. It was one of the best, safest days ever. Very little trouble at all, and I think it's working together with all the different agencies that's going to be successful. You can't do it on your own. You need us all. You need to encourage us to be part of the new setup. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a very good point. The first point around we're here to keep people safe, as that means managing traffic and assisting local communities in community-based activities. Of course, we're going to try to do that. The reality is that some people like the police there as a comfort blanket for these things, or almost as a facet of the village fair or whatever. Those sorts of things, while they're nice to do, we probably aren't going to be able to do, or certainly not to the same extent. But nor are we going to leave people vulnerable to road safety issues and all the rest of it. So that'll all just go into the mix. This is the problem with budget cuts. Normally things get affected to a degree. There's very few things that are absolute in terms of we're never going to do this ever again. So that sort of community engagement piece we'll continue to do, but we'll be doing it if it's for a very specific policing purpose. And that's unfortunate in some ways, but it is a consequence of the cuts. Your other point is a brilliant one around the voluntary sector. I was in Bangor on duty, talking to police officers and talking to volunteers on Easter Monday, and it was a great positive vibe about the place. I met with the volunteers from the SOS bus, for example, and their enthusiasm for what they were doing on a voluntary basis was just refreshing. It was tremendous, and of course it was a good day out for all. And that's exactly the sort of placement of the community ethos that we're trying to promote. And some of those voluntary organisations do that. You know, that collaborative decision-making piece that I was talking about, outstanding. In the Belfast city centre on a Friday, Saturday night, or up to 3 a.m. the following morning, and see the work that's going on from faith groups, the SOS bus, volunteers from a variety of sectors and motivations, actually helping the policing footprint and community safety in the true sense of the word. So we're going to need to do more of that, and we're grateful for the contribution made by the voluntary sector.
Just like to say, on Monday morning in our area, the police people on voluntary agencies, and they will just be able to know that happens in our area.
Sorry, forgive me, where is your area?
Northbound.
Right. Oh, well, that's good. I mean, there are various levels of engagement and coordination in different places. We don't like to sit in the Ivy Tower headquarters and be too prescriptive about how local commanders engage. There is an expectation that people do that, and actually they find themselves needing to do it more and more as our own police resources get squeezed further. So I'm grateful for all that you do and that good engagement and cooperation with the police. So thank you.
Chair, would you like to just comment in terms of PCSPs are obviously mentioned quite a bit in terms of the policing plan around support and delivery of policing at the local level. Do you want to just talk a wee bit about the delivery through PCSPs and board support for that?
Yes, well, we've been talking with the Chief Constable about what I was setting out this morning was very high level strategic outcomes and everything. But it's very, very important that when you get to the local levels that people are able to interpret that for the local area. So vulnerability in some areas might be very different than others. For example, you have people saying rural crime doesn't feature in the policing plan. Well, of course it does, because if that's what's the problem in Fermanagh, then the local policing team would pick that up. But I think it's very important that the local, and we see some very good practice, and this is something we talk about, sharing that good practice and spreading it out. It's very important that the policing partnerships and the local police authority work together on their own plan. They have to have account of what's the high level stuff and looking at how we're going to measure the overall achievements of the police. But if it's not relevant to the local area, it's not good. So I do think it's good. Personally, I'd like to see much more engagement with ourselves at PCSPs, and I think that's on the cards for next year, and also with the police service, because more and more, Albert's example and others, when the PCSPs come in with the police, you do see changes in behaviours across communities, and it's the way forward.
Thank you. I have a question just from Les, and then I'll take a question here and another one here after that.
Thanks, Anne and George, for today. I have a particular question about the issue of child sexual exploitation. Delighted to see it both in the policing plan and in your seminar series. The Commission has its own engagement with senior police officers and police service staff on the ground. And a recurring theme is the worry about looked after children, particularly in institutional settings, being at risk of child sexual exploitation. And it's clear there's frustrations on the ground that at best the police can play a role which is about reacting and responding, but not get on the front foot. And the notion of the collaborative action-oriented approach seems absolutely vital if we want to tackle this issue. And if ever there's another issue, if you like, kind of past and the present in terms of historical institutional abuse and what's happening today and the vulnerabilities of child sexual exploitation, this is an area ripe for that approach. So my question really is, can you give us some succour that there is a front foot approach? And I say that recognizing that justice, health and social services, the voluntary sector and a number of other organisations are a vital part of finding a solution to this particular issue. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Liz. Well, this is it's an important issue, not just because it creates a very significant piece of demand for policing services, but actually the impact on young people, on children, is huge. And I suppose if we needed to be taught about this, the recent historical institutional abuse inquiry and some of the stories that we saw presented in the local media, you know, was, I suppose, testimony to the horrible impact that is lifelong that child abuse has. It's sort of stating the obvious, but I'm trying to convey to you that we take this seriously, both at a sort of human and organisational level. You're right, this is a prime area for collaboration, and very often the police should be getting engaged as a sort of service of last resort, and sometimes it feels like first resort. And all suffering squeezed and pressurised budgets and reduced resourcing. The danger in that, if people take a very siloed approach, is that risk can get transferred and offloaded to other organisations that aren't necessarily the best place to deal with it. And on this occasion, sometimes that's the police service on the receiving end of that. But we are working in a mature way, and I think there's at least an intention as to engage with your commission around the partnership arrangement between the police service and the health trust. Sean Wright, the superintendent in Lisburn Castlereagh district, that's his day job, but he also takes a corporate responsibility for us of trying to develop this partnership agreement, a memorandum of understanding. I think it's on about version 27, because we're trying to get it right and get agreement, and it isn't easy. But we are taking that seriously, we're working on it, and I think there's actually an intention at least to link in with yourselves around that because of the interest that the Commission have on this issue of child sexual exploitation.
Chair, would you like to just maybe update in terms of the thematic inspection that the board has, the Human Rights Advisor, on child sexual exploitation, and maybe the opportunity to continue this debate?
Yeah, I think there is an opportunity, Les, to do that. We have the Human Rights Advisor is looking at child exploitation for us. We would do a number of thematic reviews, which is looking at that, because we have had quite a lot of feedback from various people, including some of the custody visitors who are here, who have been very concerned about, on maybe on a Friday evening they have arrested someone who had one person there in their car. So they can arrest the drunken driver. What do you do with a 15-year-old girl on a Friday evening? And what can a police officer do if there's nowhere for them to go? And we've had discussions about that. If the actual care home that they're in doesn't take them back, they have to go back into police custody. And we did have a case 2 years ago, I think, in Omagh, where the young person was in police custody because nowhere else to go. The police did a really good job, but it wasn't their job to do that. And that has been raised several times. So Alice and our human rights advisor are looking at that whole child exploitation area. And I think actually the plans are to come back to you and a number of other partners about how we can get this raised at a better level. We did write to the previous health justice, and I forget the third minister, to say that we need to get together and do something like this. It's not good enough, but we haven't moved very far on that.
Thank you. I'm going to take the question here, and then there's another one indicated. If anybody else wants to speak, let me know, because I am conscious I told you 1:45, and I'm running late already.
I'll try to keep my brief then. Thanks very much. But listen, I'm very encouraged to see that both domestic and sexual violence is given such prominence in the plan. And I did note the recent report where the police are seeing a huge increase in the reporting of both crimes. And I know that in our previous mandate, our last Justice Minister was very keen to pass legislation on coercive control, because there is no specific legislation in Northern Ireland for domestic violence. I suppose a quick question on that one is, how do you feel if that law was here, how would that maybe help you in tackling this crime, if at all? And just on the sexual crime element, I know that when you're talking about working better with the PPS, the recent figures have also showed that there's a huge increase in reporting, and that the police do recommend prosecutions, but more often than not, they don't seem to make it into court. We have a very low conviction rate. What have you done in terms of working better between the police and the PPS in terms of maybe trying to secure better outcomes?
Well, the first point around coercive control orders, we would welcome that in the consultation. We are hugely supportive of it. It does exist in other jurisdictions, and other policing organisations are now how best to use that facility. And I suppose we don't want to be lazy. Sometimes the benefit of things having operated in a parallel jurisdiction first is you can learn the lessons, both in terms of making the law better and also the implementation of it. So we're up for all of that. We work very closely with the previous Justice Minister, and we hope that that's still on the agenda at the Department of Justice. So supportive of it, keen to use it, and again, not just because we selfishly want to have more tools in the box, but actually this is about the core principles of policing that I talked about, attacking people and preventing harm, and of course control orders and so on, and offending around all of that helps us to do that. So supportive of that. I suppose part of the frustration of policing is that good policing will collect the evidence and present it in an ethical and balanced way to a prosecutor, who will then make a decision on whether or not there is a reasonable likelihood of conviction through a prosecution, and also whether it's in the public interest to prosecute. Some of these cases of serious sexual offending and so on, it's not always straightforward to get to that threshold. In our society, we have that sort of beyond reasonable doubt threshold. So the prosecutor, and they can speak for themselves, but they do need to be satisfied before they instigate proceedings that there's a reasonable prospect of a successful conviction. I think the challenge for us is making sure that we have professionalised and we have done absolutely everything in our power to gather the evidence to the best possible quality to enable the prosecutor to do the job. We have done that through an investment, even in a time of shrinking budgets, in training and accreditation for public protection officers. We have created a centralised public protection command that specialises in this, it's seen as specialism within policing, because previously in some inspections the quality of the investigation depended on the interest, knowledge, background, experience of local leadership. We've brought all of that under a very experienced Detective Chief Superintendent, George Clark, who leads in all strands of public protection for us. And actually, at a time of reducing budgets, public protection is the one area where we have invested in the last year around 30 additional people into it. And I know some transformational change work that the Deputy Chief Constable is leading on is this is one of the areas that we plan to invest in further, because we understand that the impact at a human level, the fact that more people are enough conscious to come forward and report it, we want to reciprocate that with making sure that our performance around this and the professional of our investigations is as good as it can be. Hopefully that reassures you to some extent. But we can't, if the evidence isn't there, you know, we're not going to do everything unethical. So we gather the evidence as best we can, present it to the prosecutor, and then make a decision on it. And that sometimes leads to a disappointing answer. I mean, that's not the criticism of the DPS, that is just the, if the evidence is there, it's the prosecution. If there's not, unfortunately, that's one of the costs of our democracy and ethical prosecution systems.
I'm going to move very quickly to the question at the front and then the final question here. We will be available afterwards if anybody didn't get an opportunity, just for 5 or 10 minutes afterwards if anybody wants to take questions after that.
Daniel Holdis, EEB. Frankness in referring to budget cuts as budget cuts, rather than calling them something like efficiency savings in the like. And in that context, specifically, and the impact of budget cuts on staffing, I was just wondering how you envisage taking forward the action under the plan around improving underrepresentation. So there will be a focus on, say, issues around retention, which is sometimes a bit more difficult to get statistics and analyse, as well as sort of encouragement and recruitment. So that was my first question. And the second one, just to welcome, as others, has the focus in here on vulnerable groups. And just look for a bit of meat on the bone in relation to steps around hate crimes, whether that'll perhaps go beyond some of the measures that are often focused on around whether an offence has been aggravated by hostility, to also look at offences around incitement to hatred under the public order under Part 3, another issue that the outgoing Justice Minister was quite keen to review and look into, both in terms of those offences, but also the context of when the police will take executive action, when the police will intervene under the duty to prevent crime, to say remove racist materials that would reach that threshold, etc. Thank you.
Maybe afterwards you could speak on underrepresentation.
There's a lot in that. Daniel, there's all these new questions. What we are doing through the budget cuts is we're not going to do the usual pendulum swing in terms of all or nothing. So we're going to continue to recruit throughout this financial year. We probably to get our numbers down to 6, 7, and then to 6, 6 probably next year. We're clearly going to be bringing in fewer people than are leaving the organisation, but the Human Resources Department are pretty good at modelling, predicted retirements and people exiting the organisation. So there's still going to be 220 due to this 260 over the next 12 months that we're bringing in. We have done commissioned a piece of work through Deloitte looking at barriers to recruitment. That work is now complete. So the next campaign for police officer recruitment is going to have a number of measures in place that is going to reduce the attrition rate from people applying to people actually coming into the college. We're quite happy offline to share some of that with you, Daniel, without some reassurance around that. I would like to see the organisation represented and very public about that if we're going to be truly have confidence of the community and even think in our mentality, our psyche, to be aligned with the communities that we serve. We need to be representative. So there's a legal requirement and a right thing to do, but there's actually operational benefits to us being representative. So as a senior executive team, we're absolutely committed to that. So we'll see how we go on that. the vulnerability and the hate crime piece we're taking it seriously. We will look at our response in terms of the legislation, in terms of our own guidance, in terms of UK guidance. We have people who have personal responsibility at chief officer level for overseeing this on my behalf. And then we've got one superintendent, Emma Bond, out in Newton Abbey, who, like Sean right in Lisburn, she does a day job of looking after Antrim Newton Abbey district, but she also leads the tactical level across the organisation for hate crime, and is doing a good job in that, ensuring that we're compliant with our own implementation of policy and so on around that. And on top of all of that, we seek assurance. So for the last 2 years, for example, a significant piece of work in our internal audit has been bringing the internal auditors to look at our compliance with our own hate crime policy. There is a whole debate around, not a legal debate, there are legal difficulties around points to prove and getting, it's a bit like the sexual offences piece, getting behaviour that is deeply distasteful over the threshold for a reasonable likelihood of a criminal conviction in relation to some of this incitement to hatred stuff, for example. And we're not condoning the behaviour, by the way. We're just saying that the legislative bar and the points to prove are at such a level that it isn't it's challenging to secure the evidence to get it to that stage, even though most rational, normal thinking people, whatever that means, would see it as distasteful behaviour. So some of the stuff like racism, sectarianism and so on falls below a threshold that we can take executive action in that sense. But nor is it a binary issue. You know, in fact, we've just had a conversation this morning about this. You know, and we've asked people to go and have a look at it, just with getting our position firmed up. So, you know, we've got an election on the 8th of June, and then we've got a series of bonfires in July and August. So I can imagine what's going to happen there. And I want us to be in firm footing around what our responsibilities are, what our investigative opportunities are, and are we interpreting and applying the law in a way that Parliament intended around all of these issues.
Chair, I'm going to ask you just to hold your point until I take in the last question, because I am mindful of time.
Thanks very much. First of all, my name is Michael O'Hara, by the way. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the board on organising this session and the future ones that come. I think it's very informative to hear the Chair giving the view of the policing plan and the Chief Constable articulating the challenges that are ahead. It's very informative, very valuable for us as members of the public to understand it, and actually quite shocking to hear that the cuts will actually represent the entire bill for the neighbourhood policing. So it's quite shocking to hear the 20 million cut. I'm an independent custody visitor with the board, and I'm also a member of the PCSP, so I kind of get a good view of the good and the bad of how things are working in terms of policing. Custody, I'd like to say that we've had a very positive experience over this past year from the Belfast, Antrim and County Down teams. We've got very close with the police. Melanie Jones came to our last meeting and articulated the challenge at Musgrave Street, so we're very pleased that issues that are being addressed, I see very positive outcomes there. Also in the PCSP, I do see a lot of good work going on, but I appreciate the Chair's comments, and I think more time needs to be spent on policing matters on the PCSPs. These sessions will give that opportunity as well, but there does need to be more time there. The policing committee is probably the most valuable meeting that the PCSPs hold. It strikes me that, you know, and it's been well heard here, resource and budget, the policing plan will either be successful or will fail on that. I would like to know what would be classified as core policing activity, because it does strike me when I hear police, the Chief Constable talking. There's a lot of non-core activity going on with police officers, whether sitting with somebody in hospital overnight or wherever that may be. Is there an exercise that we look at core activity and non-core, and then put a plan together for the non-core activity to be taken up by who, where would it reside, Is there more of a role for voluntary organisations, statutory bodies, community restorative justice? Is there a plan to extend the role that those guys play?
Thanks for that, Michael. I'm going to ask the Chair and the Chief Constable just to respond with a minute each, just to a number of the issues that you had in there, but specifically your questions, Michael. Chief Constable.
Oh, right. Well, I think this notion, well, thank you for your comments, first of all, and very often it gets to my desk or my telephone, the things that have gone wrong, so thank you for your positive comments around something. It's good to know that some of it's actually working. But the piece about core and non-core activities for police officers, at one level it's a straightforward thing, because what we're saying, what the police do is what I mentioned earlier, you can say in 15 seconds, we keep people safe. That means we prevent harm, we protect people, and we bring offenders to justice. Now, it becomes more complex whenever you start looking at things like preventing harm, because we are not going to abandon a person in their hour of need, even if perhaps a health and social care worker would be better placed to support that person. So that then begs the question of how do you get joined up service delivery? And the thing that I was really encouraged about, and then had my balloon burst on with the collapse of our political institutions, was the whole outcomes-based approach in the programme for government. Massive supporter of that, the need for early intervention, joined up intervention, collaboration. All of that is actually the answer to this, because the police do have a role to play in this, either as a first responder, and then should be transferring the person and their need to somebody better equipped to deal with it, or indeed in extremis where things have gone wrong and there's some criminality or potential risk to life or something that requires an emergency response from an emergency service, a health service, or relevant social care service. So I'm stopping short of pointing the finger at other departments and public services, but I do think we need to get joined up in this, and there is a need for us to work together in that outcomes-based approach. Early preventive intervention with us all working together is actually the way to go. I do get really frustrated sometimes on a Monday morning. We hear of people who have been taken to casualty at 11 o'clock on a Friday night and are still there being babysat by 2 police officers because of delays and trolley waits and so on. It doesn't seem like it's not good for the person, and it's not best use of police officer time. And when they're doing that, they're not tackling antisocial behaviour and drug dealing and preventing collisions with all the other core policing functions that you talk about. So there is a fix that's needed, and the answer is through collaboration. And collaboration rather than just risk transference from one statutory organisation to another. It needs to be, which is why the framework of an outcomes-based programme is the way to achieve that.
Thank you. Constable,
First of all, people know what independent custody visitors are, but I think they're absolutely superb. They're just members of the public who are independent, who are recruited to visit custody suites across Northern Ireland. They're not paid for this, so they're voluntary, and they will do very detailed reports on what they find when they go into custody. And it has been, I'm sure agree, has made a great change in how custody, they've brought forward some recommendations, which major recommendations, particularly around mental health issues in custody and so on, and about how much time people spend with that. So the independent custody visit with PCSPs, absolutely we need them. Shouldn't be any dummy down, we need them more and more because of the very good work they can do to assist the police. In terms of the core and non-core, I'm afraid I would be of the view now that we really do need to look at the non-core stuff, because I see a lot of it with going out and about with the police, and it is fact that they sit there. The diagram thing that you showed us one time shocked the board, but how much downtime is just sitting around waiting when those officers are needed elsewhere. Comments earlier about child exploitation and the amount of time that police officers are spending with young people because there's nowhere else for those young people to be. If not, the police officers should be doing that, and we need to look at that. Because I think we've got to the point now, if we can't get the proper partnership, the police have to look at what should they be doing, what is the job of the police to do. I think whether we like to admit it or not, the police probably did almost everything. Everything that people wanted. If somebody rang up and said their car was broken down, the police would come and help them in the good old days, as they say. So there is a public expectation if we start to do this that the police aren't any use anymore. And that's back to my earlier comments that we need to educate the public and say, we really do start to use the police for the skills that we need them for. It doesn't mean to say they won't help people at all, but we need other people to come up to the mark as well. So, and I think that's going to be a difficult one to sell for a long time, because people have got used to the police being there to help them out, to do absolutely everything, even when they're not needed. And the police are in a difficult position because they don't want to risk turning away someone who is vulnerable, who really does need their support and help. But we have this discussion with Police Scotland. They have a very kind of problem where they're trying to look at their core business and how do you actually say to the public, well, really, we shouldn't be doing that. And it's something we've been doing for a long time. So make sure we keep the partners that are there that are good, and try and make the public aware of what the real role of policing is.
Okay, thank you, Chair, Chief Constable. Thank you very much for answering all the questions. One of the things coming through, certainly in the feedback today and certainly throughout the plan, is the whole approach in terms of collaborative working. And in many ways it would seem that it's an opportunity that we can no longer afford to miss. And it's maybe a theme that we would pick up at another time for all of the public sector. But I would just like to finish by thanking you all for taking the time to come here again to give us some feedback. If you don't fill out the sheet, come and have a word with some of us, and wish you all the best. Thank you.
Very well said. I'm going to leave this stuff for the morning. Is that alright? Yep. They just turn it all off.